So we got our camera working. Why don't we go ahead and learn up how we can set our player health and enemy health UI systems. We're just going to create the basic framework. We're not going to add any code to it this lecture. Next video, we'll start seeing how we can mess with our health bars through our combat and our code. All right. So the first thing we're going to have to do is create a canvas system with our UI. It might have been a while since we've touched UI, so I'm going to go really at a good pace, enough for you guys to catch what I'm doing here. All right, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into 2D mode. This is going to allow us to see our scene view in a flat, isometric viewpoint with no perspective. This is going to make working with our UI even easier. All right. The next thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to import some of the UI elements I've prepared for you guys, or you can go out and find or make your own UI frames and bars and portraits and all that. So I'm going to go ahead and import that package. So I've downloaded it to my desktop right now. So I'm going to take this UI assets and I'm going to drag and drop it right on top of my assets list in my project window. I'm going to import. And you'll see in your sprites folder, it makes a new folder called UI. And for just this package, I have Sentinel and Gambit. I'll probably include portraits for all the provided characters for you guys to mess around with. The next thing we have to do is select all of our new UI sprites. Make sure they're 2D and UI. I probably already have them set that way, maybe, but it's up to you to check on that. And hit apply. So now that we have our images, we can start building our HUD canvas. So the first step is to go to Game Object UI, and we're going to have to make a canvas. We're going to call this Heads Up Display HUD Canvas. All right. So if we zoom out or press F on our keyboard, so this is zoomed in on Gambit. If we select our HUD canvas we just made and press F, we zoom out, and our HUD canvas is huge right now. Just go with it. It's just that big, so the resolution works really well because 1 pixel on this canvas system equals 1 unit. So every pixel is a meter long and a meter high. So that's why this is huge. It just allows the camera to render the UI as cleanly as possible. So that's why it's so big. All right. The next thing we're going to do is ignore this event system. That's just what Unity does. You might, in the future, if you get really slick with your scripts, you might need to come in and mess with this event system. But we're going to ignore it right now. We're really going to work in HUD Canvas. The only thing we're going to really look at over here is we're going to go to UI Scale Mode, and we're going to scale with screen size. So if our screen size is this small on the left and it gets this big, the UI is going to scale with how big it is. So that's really the only thing we need to do there. All right. So we're going to click on our HUD canvas in our hierarchy, and we're going to right click on it, and we're going to go to UI, or actually we're going to create an empty layer. And this empty layer, we're going to call this player health. It's just an empty game object. And this little rectangle right here is kind of like our, bounds. Everything that we're going to put inside our player health will exist inside this rectangle. And then you may notice these little rascally little pivot points here. These are our anchors. These 4 little handles right here dictate how our UI scales with our screen size. So we're going to make it really simple. We're actually going to select our player health game object here, and we're going to go to our anchor shortcut, and we're going to set it to the top left. So now our player health will scale according to where the top left of our screen is. So I'm just going to go in and, make a little spot like so. I'll probably have to go back in and readjust it when I start getting some of my U elements in here. So we're going to work with a brand new UI element that we haven't worked with before called sliders. Sliders already have code built into them where you can adjust the length of a health bar and shrink it and grow it according to where a numeric value is at for our healths. So our health stats.int our int health in that script there will directly relate to our slider we're about to make. So I'm going to right click player health, go to UI, and make a slider. All right, so I'm going to zoom in by pressing F, and this is what we get so far. All right, a really generic slider. And we're going to have to finesse this and build it out a little bit so it's more in line with the theme of our game. But we can already see some things going on over here. The one thing I want to show you guys right here is min value and max value. So 0 would be 0 health, max value. Let's set it to 100 right now. And look how this slider works. And if you want to use, if you're using an int or a float, depending on which either or for your health variable, you can make it a whole number, integer, or leave it unchecked for decimal points like you would see in a float. I'm going to leave it checked as whole numbers for right now. And we need to start coming in here and finagling this. The first thing that we're probably going to do is get rid of that little circle. We don't really want a circle. That's more if you had like a setting on I don't know, a graphical setting where you wanted to increase the gamma or something, or the brightness. So I want to take that handle, all this stuff, and I think I'm just going to delete it. So now we're left with just a sliding bar like so. So we got two elements right now. We have a dark gray background and a lighter gray foreground. So our background is what we want to change now. So let's select our background, and we can see it has a source image, and it's just this boring old gray whatever right there. Well, we're going to take our health bar sprite, we're going to drag and drop it right on there. All right. So I'm going to start positioning my slider within the bounds of my player health area. So I select my slider, and I'm just moving these little anchor points around. And I'm going to make sure I'm in pivot mode so I can grab this little blue thing, and I'm going to snap it to the top left. All right, and don't forget, we're going to always anchor our stuff. Actually, why don't we anchor our anchor points to our blue buttons right here. What we're going to do now is we're going to have to, I'm going to move this fill area down for a second, and I'm going to really get in here. And on my background, I just moved fill area down on the screen to get it out of the way. So on my background, I'm going to call this yellow frame background. That way I know it's mine. I know what I'm doing with it. I'm just going to kind of scale it like so. It's kind of warping the circular feel of that. I want to get it to where, is that too big? This is what it's going to look like on our screen here. Constantly be going back in between game view. I think that's a pretty good size. Considering there's not going to be much action on the top part of the screen, I think we can live with that. All right, so my yellow bar is good. My yellow frame background's good. Now we're going to go to a fill area, and we're going to go to fill. And again, we have another UI sprite. This time we're going to put my green bar, we're going to drag and drop it onto the source image there. And then after we get our green bar in there, we're going to go and select our fill area. And now we're going to start positioning it like so. I don't really like how this is behaving. I don't like how my green is on top of my yellow. I want this to be behind. So if you find it like that, if you find out that that's happening, just take your fill area and place it right above our background, our yellow frame background. Basically, the order in which they're stacked in our our hierarchy dictates what gets drawn on top of what. So now with my fill area selected, I'm going to kind of go in. I'm going to make it fill just the area in which my empty bar is at. Notice how I'm sticking close to this empty area, this negative space. Then I'm going to go in, oh, wrong area. Then I'm going to go in and grab my fill. I want to call this green bar fill so I can better clarify what's going on. Then I'm just going to grab it and like so, put my anchor points, these little white arrows here. Just going to keep using my anchor points like I know how to. I'm going to make them anchor. Actually, I'm going to make everything anchor to my player health rectangle here. So if you ever have any doubts about how your green bar is behaving, you'll see how my green bar kind of got off right here. Well, that's because I need to adjust the anchor points a little bit better. And I think, yeah, we're going to stretch left to right, like so. All right. If you're ever any doubt of what you're doing is breaking anything, you can always go back to the slider header. I'm going to uncheck interactable and mess up that a little bit. And transition will be none. But you can see that my green bar is still working. It's just now that I unchecked interactable and set transition to none, it looks like it's being a little cranky. I'm going to go back in and refinagle how this thing is behaving. There we go. And it looks like it's scaling properly with my screen size. I'm going to hit play with maximize on, and it looks like it's sitting pretty nicely up there. All right, so we need to do one more thing, or a few more things. I don't want this transparent background on my health bar. I want to have a red background here. So what we're going to do is inside slider, with slider selected, I'm going to go UI, and I'm going to input a new image. I'm going to call this red bar fill, kind of like our green bar fill. But I'm going to take my red bar and just drag and drop it onto my red bar fill. And I'm going to put it right above. So we'll have red bar fill area, and then yellow frame background. I'm going to go to my slider and so I can get that green bar out of the way. So I just use my value meter here to shrink my green bar. And I'm going to grab my red bar, and I'm going to position it just how I want it. So it's sitting right behind that empty space. Now when I go to my slider, it looks pretty familiar, right? Looks almost like a real video game at this point. All right, so for all intents and purposes, our slider is set up, but we got to do one more thing in player health. We're going to right click on player health. We're going to add one more thing, and we're going to go to image. We're going to call this image portrait, and I'm going to drag and drop my Gambit portrait onto that sprite, and I'm going to position this box so it is lined up with the top left and bottom of the circle. Just frame it right in that circle like so. And I'm going to anchor it to the top left. So I'm going to go up to my rect transform, use these anchors on the top left like so. So now my portrait is anchored to the top left, so it's always going to follow my yellow frame right there. All right, so we got our player health made. So we're going to duplicate this. And why don't we call this enemy health? All right. So we're going to do a few things now. Firstly, with our enemy health empty game object selected, we're going to scale this in the negative X direction. Next, we're going to go over and place it right in the top left corner. But this time we're going to change our anchor points to anchor in the top right, like so. So now we have two health bars anchored on either side facing each other. I have a slider that still works for this side. And why don't we just go ahead and update our portrait with our sentinel, like so. All right, perfect. So it looks like our HUD for our health bars is pretty much good to go. Next, we'll be accessing player health and enemy health. We'll be updating the max value because different enemies will have different healths. And we'll also be able to adjust this value slider on the fly according to where our health is at. And depending on what enemy we're fighting, we'll be able to change out its portrait. But since I'm only always using Sentinels, it'll probably always be the Sentinel portrait. All right, so looks like we're good in this video. So we're going to continue on to the next one to see how we can get these sliders working with our code.